Hi everyone, I'd like to share with you today a brief history of Vietnam, and it's okay. You done? Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Thích Hang Dak. I'm a faculty member at IUS. Today I'd like to provide a brief introduction of Vietnamese history and Buddhism in the country. So this is the general information about Vietnam. So Vietnam is a country in Southeast Asia. So you can see the map here, and it's exists for 1,000 years. We will discuss about its developments, how it spread, and expand out south. And basically, Vietnam is a tropical country. Right now, approximately 80 or 85% is Buddhist, and we have some Christian, Catholic, Khao Dai, and other people that follow different traditions. And there's many different ethnicities in the country, like Vietnamese, mountain tribes, Cham, lowland tribes, Khmer, Cambodia, and Chinese. So basically, Vietnamese people came down from southern China in the form of Yue, and according to the records, and many Yue tribes around southern China here that exist before the Han conquer. But later on, those Yue tribes have been assimilated into Chinese people, and now all the Yue, that means the Viet people, they still survive in Vietnam, and this is a long history of Vietnam, and this is around 2500 BC. We were dominated by the Chinese for 3 times, and in total it's about 1,000 years. But still, we preserve our traditions and culture. And in the introductions about Vietnamese Buddhism from ancient times to the 10th century. And so here early Vietnam that represent a distinct civilization in Southeast Asia. So the Lap Viet people have the culture of Dong Sơn. Here you see that Dong Sơn drums. Those were the ancestors of modern Vietnamese. So many of them live around the Red River in North Vietnam. Right here, Red River here. That go through the whole North Vietnam here. And they cultivate the rice, produce the bronze artifacts with weapons, Dong Sơn drums, and the people in the south at some points they were part of Cambodian kingdom of Funan. This is the Funan era. All right, here you can see that as occupied the southern part of Vietnam in the past, and the Chinese occupied Vietnam for almost 1,000 years, but during those times there were many rebellions that went against the Chinese occupations, dominations, and of course the Vietnamese people, they adopt some portion of the Chinese culture too. And this here during the Han Dynasty, a portion of Vietnam were occupied by the Chinese. And the first liberation is occur by Chung sister. They were ladies and led the successful uprising, but eventually was suppressed. And so both of them commit suicide instead of being caught by the Chinese. So after that, the Chinese dominate again, and the second Chinese dominations happened again after the Jew ladies rebellion in the 3rd century. She successfully won the battle against the Wu force in the south. And we know that Buddhism exists in the 5th and 6th century BCE, and later on, due to the efforts of King Ashoka, he sent many delegations to different countries, to the east and to the west, so that those Buddhist delegations could spread Buddhism around those areas. And according to the historical records, one delegation went to what we call the golden countries, but up to now there's some conflicts, dispute about that golden country, whether it's Burma, Thailand, Cambodia, and southern Vietnam. We don't know exactly the area that they went to, but we know by the times of King Ashoka, about the 3rd century BCE, that delegation went to the area. And you know, in the past, these are the routes that have interaction with the east and the west by the Silk Road and by the ocean maritime route that transport the goods from one place to others. So we hear that from India, they may sell to the ports of Ganges, Sabaram, and go to Hanoi, Istiaochi, and just hear how Buddhist spread to all the country through the Silk route or the maritime route to all the country. And according to some historical records, they say that in the 2nd or 4th century BCE, there were 3 important Buddhist centers like Loyan, Panchen, and Willow. Here, you can see that the Loyan here, Panchen here, and Willow here. And during the Chinese dominations, Hanoi's era was called Jiaoji, and that's where the Indian monks came together with the merchants to spread Buddhism in the area. And some of them, they translate the Buddhist Sutra either from Pali or Sanskrit into Chinese, or the Chinese monks or local people would learn Sanskrit to translate into Chinese, the indigenous language. And so here, the Jiao Zhou or Jiaoji era in the area, and that is the Lilao, usually is the old cities or capitals of Jiaoji. Right now, it belongs to Bắc Ninh province in Vietnam, and according to the records, they say that during those times, around the first century, so there were around 500 monks and about at least 20 Buddhist centers in the areas that were active, and they have translated many Buddhist texts, and besides Mahājivaja, Kala Ruchi, that came from India directly. There were other Chinese scholars that immigrated into Jiaoji or Jiao to study Buddhism under those Indian monks, with many famous Buddhist scholars. And one of the famous Buddhist practitioners and scholar, his name is Kang Sang Hoi. He was one of the masters in Lilo Center. And later on, he went to Nanjing, southern China, to establish the first center over there in the 3rd century. So again, together with Taoism and Confucianism, Buddhism was flourished in the era due to the influx of the Indian monks that came from overseas. So Buddhism was closely connected with the national life. Many Buddhist monks were good advisors of the kings or leaders in the era, and they later on the first periods of David independence start with the King Lý Nam Đế between the year of 544 to 548. He won the independence from the Chinese dominations, and he highly honors Buddhism, and he used to consult with the Buddhist monks about the religious and political aspects of life. And finally, the battle of the Bac Đăng River in 930s, that opened a new chapter of the David history toward the Chinese dominations. And that's the period of national independence from the 11th century to the 14th century. That was considered the golden age of Vietnamese Buddhism. And so here we have a Ngô dynasty between 939 to 967. He found the dynasty and named the country as David, and later on have Din dynasty from 968 to 980. This dynasty negotiated tributary relationship with China, and we have the early Liu, 980 to 1009, and the most important was the Li dynasties. That's when Buddhism was flourished, and the capitals was moved to Hanoi in 1075, and the first examinations was held based upon the Confucius idea, and after that we have the Zhong dynasty. That's continual expansion of the population and territories. And here you can say that Li, Zheng, and Lei during the Li dynasty, they consolidate the country. The Zheng they gain the power to arrange marriage, and the Li has the longest dynasty rules, and the Vietnamese territories was expanded southwardly. And here in the 10th century, it made the era of both independence of the Viet nation and prosperity of Buddhism. And in this Din from Malay and Li and Zheng dynasties, there were many Buddhist monks that engaged in politics. Many of them were national master or national counselor for those kings to run the country. And there's many state councillor, national teacher like Chan Master Khương Viết, Pháp Thuần, and the Chinese Master Wang Han, who made the great contributions to the enthronement of the kingly title, the founders of the Li dynasty, and he was then as the Sangha president. One thing I want to mention is that in order to gain independence, from the Chinese dominations, those early kings, they followed advice from those Buddhist monks, because most of the time Buddhist monks would uppercase independency instead of depending on the Chinese one. And the Chinese emperors, they uppercase the Taoists, especially the Confucius traditions, so that they would impose those ideas on the Vietnamese people to control the people. But because of the independency attitude of those Buddhist monks, that could have to rearrange the national independencies from the Chinese domination. And during that periods of time, Buddhism will flourish, especially in the Li and Zheng dynasty for 4 centuries. They had to spread Buddhism, and thousands of Buddhist temples, pagodas, and stupa were built around countries, and among them, one particular temple, what we call one pillar pagoda, that was the most unique temple that was built in the 10th and 11th century, and because of the war, it reduced to small one. But right now, nowadays, it's many some young people, they use the 3Ds to redraw the schematic plan of the temple that was built during the 10th and 11th centuries. And we see that one here. And Lý Thái Tổ has been the first Lý king that has established the Lý dynasty. He was raised in a Buddhist temple by a Buddhist monk. That's why when he became the king, he supported and recognized Buddhism as a state religion. And this phenomenon was prolonged to the Zhang dynasty, but Confucianism was also supported too. And especially during the Zhang dynasty, the king Trần Nhân Tông, he was a Buddhist scholar. After he led Vietnamese people to defeat the Mongolian or the Yuan armies twice, so he educated the front and became the monks to initiate the Trúc Lâm or bamboo grove Zen traditions in Vietnam at the Mount Uyển Tứ. So this is the pictures of him, and that Trúc Lâm bamboo grove Zen tradition is still survive up to modern age. And here the mountain that where he went to do the practice, what they call Yến Tứ mountain, and now they build everything for the Buddhists and tourists to come, especially this is considered as the holy Buddhist place in the north, and it's in the Quảng Ninh province. Let me show you. Okay, here, this is the Quảng Ninh province, and Yến Tứ is located in this province. And here now they make his statue and put his statue on that mountain for people to come and worship, revere, as well as practice meditation over there. So again, this is considered as one of the most sacred place for the Buddhist people to come to do the practice. But because of the Chinese influence, culturally and spiritually, so in the Lý and Zhang dynasty, so Buddhism was blended with Taoism and Confucianism, and the three religions grows in harmonies with each other. This was many centers that were built around the country. And the next one is the decline of Buddhism in the 15th century, and its restoration in later century. And so here we see that in the 15th century, that's Đại Việt country and the Champa here. And during this time, right after the Zhang dynasty, was the whole dynasty that took over the country, but somehow this king Hồ Quý Ly, he has more interest in Confucianism than Buddhism, So that's why Buddhism eventually lost interest in the court. So in 1414, Chinese force invade David one more time, and that is the third Chinese dominations for 20 years, and Vietnam become Chinese vassal again. So during those time, Buddhism and Buddhist works were destroyed a lot by the Chinese governments, and the large numbers of Thalan monks were sent to China in exile. And Buddhism and Taoism was strictly controlled. So Buddhism went down until the 16th century. So here, the whole dynasties, the last during this time, and was defeated by the Ming dynasty, Chinese occupations. But later on, he used the tactics to defeat the Chinese occupations, and later on, the countries was spread down south, right here. After the Lei dynasty, we have the Mark dynasty, the Qing dynasty, and the Nguyen dynasty, and the Champa here during the 16th century. And again, during 16th century, there's the civil war between the Qing and the Nguyen, the Qing in the north and the Nguyen in the south. Somehow the Nguyen dynasties try to expand down south. During this time, during the Qing-Nguyen conflict, civil war that lasts for 200 years, both the Qing and Nguyen try to restore Buddhism in order to win the people hurt or trust, because most people during those time even they follow and keep Buddhist traditions in the rural area. Even at the court, they would not much protected or support, but in the rural areas, the patients, most of them follow Buddhism. So that's why during this civil war for 300 years, the Qing in the north and the Nguyen lords in the south, they try to restore Buddhism by building many Buddhist centers, pagodas, to win the people's support. And here, that's in the 17th century, we have the north, the Qing, and the south, the Nguyen, and they expand down south, and the Champa eventually reduced in small regions. So they spread Buddhism together with the expansion of the country. But we need to know that the Champa people, or the Cham people in the Champa country in the southern and the central areas, they have import or got influence from Mahayana Buddhist traditions together with Hinduism. And so when the Vietnamese people spread to the south, they adopt some types of Cham, Mahayana's Buddhist tradition too. And like I say, that there's some conflicts between the state and Buddhism during the 16th and 17th centuries. And some kings, they would not support Buddhism much, but there's one particular king that tried to destroy Buddhism by closing the temples and didn't allow the Buddhist monks and nuns to stay in the city. So that's why this whole crisis of Buddhist communities during those times. But somehow there's one monk, he came down from the mountain to explain the benefits of Buddhism to the country. So eventually the king respect the Buddhist tradition again. So this statue represents the sincerity of the king who repent his karmas that has destroyed Buddhist centers before. So here he ordered to make this statue to show his sincerity of repentance. And again, many Vietnamese kings in the north and the south, they eventually became devout Buddhists, and they built many Buddhist centers as well as renovates many well-known Buddhist temples, monasteries, especially in the south, central Vietnam, the Timur pagodas in Huế, Bài Lõ, Nguyên Hoa in 1601, Thiên Tho, Bảo Giác pagoda, and so forth. So these are the center. And in the north, under the support of the Qing dynasty, the Trúc Lâm Zen school was encouraged to restore by Master Trấn Nguyên. And in the south, Đằng Trống, the Nguyên dynasty of Nguyên Laws, they welcomed many Chan masters from China, and they established the Linh Chi and Lâm Tế set, as well as the Sao Tum set too. And in the 7th century, we see the destruction of the Champa kingdom that was occupied by the big horse, and this was accomplished with the Khmers and the developments of the regionalism and the Tahitian rebellions late in 18th century, and later on the Nguyen Emperor Yalom unified the country. Here we say that the Tahitian rebellion and established the dynasty, but his dynasty was short-lived, and later on the whole country was unified by the Nguyễn Gia Long, but he was supported by the French force. That's why he could regain the power. But later on, between the year of 1858 to 1995, the French occupy or colonize Vietnam, and they divide Vietnam into three regions: the north, the middle, and the south. So the French colonized the whole Indochina regions. So by force, they begin with the reason of the French missionaries were persecuted by the Nguyen. They just used that reason to colonize Vietnam with the modern military weapons. And of course, they exploit the resources of the countries, but on the other hand, they introduce Western educations and so forth. So the next things I want to discuss is the Vietnamese Buddhism in the modern age and how it's devised. So from beginnings of the French colonizations or domination over Vietnam, the conditions of Buddhism was getting worse. Even during the Nguyen Dynasty era, there were Confucians scholars that tried to oppress Buddhism in the courts, but we know that the people in the rural areas, in the countryside, they really absorb and follow Buddhism in the wide areas. From the 1920s, under the influence of the Chinese Buddhist revival, there was a movement of revival of Vietnamese Buddhism led by Master Khánh Hoa and many Buddhist associations that was established in the South, Central, and North Vietnam from 1931 to 1934. And many Buddhist associations and institutions were found throughout the countries, especially the Vietnamese Buddhist Youth Association were founded by Dr. Lady Tham, and right now they still have the Vietnamese Buddhist Youth Association overseas in this country in some Buddhist center too. So after World War II, Vietnam became a republic, and later on the French returned after defeat of the Japan, and it engaged again in the Indo-China War. And so by 1954, after their defeated in Dien Bien Phu, they give up completely, but Vietnam was divided into two portions. One is north and one is south. So in the north, it followed the communist government, and in the south, it followed the republics, the democrats. By the year of 1954, and later on in 1951, this King Bảo Đại, he was the last Nguyễn King, but under the control of French. But by 1951, he signed the decrees that delegating all the religions except Catholics and Protestant missions to the status of public association. That's when he promotes Catholicism and Christianity, while suppressing the Buddhists and other traditions. And in 1955, Ngô Đình Diệm, he was a Catholic president in the South. He detained that laws that oppress Buddhism and consider as a public organizations, not the main religions in Vietnam. So in 1957, he removed Buddha birthdays from the list of the official holidays. And here, this is the second Indo-China War, the Gulf Tonkin incident, 1964, the Test offenses, 1968, the Paris Accords, 1973, and Spring offenses, 1975, when the communist government force occupy the south, and later on it became Socialist Republic of Vietnam in 1976. So and go back to the year of 1963. Thích Quang Đức, he burned himself alive for the cause of Buddhism because the regimes oppress the Buddhist people in the south. As here the image that he burns himself that shocked the whole world, that reveal how oppressive the Golden Yin Catholic regimes was, and that's why later on as regimes will collapse, and later on the Buddhists gained the freedoms to practice their traditions in the country. And after the North Vietnamese armies occupy and unify the countries in 1975, these were third Indo-China War. That's been the Vietnam and Cambodian wars, and Vietnam and Chinese War between the year of 1978 1991. So at that times, even now, Vietnam, China, and Cambodia are still considered as communist countries, but they got into conflict with each other, especially in the south. The Cambodians, Khmer force occupied some portion of the southern areas of Vietnam, and of course they kill so many people. So that's why the Vietnamese government sent the armies to defeat the Khmer Rouge and stay there for 10 years. During those times, the Chinese Republic invade the North Vietnam for less than a month, but later on both sides declare themselves winners. And at that time, that the Vietnamese communists still follow the control authority policies. But later on, in 1986, they have Dormer, that's been the new transformation of economic developments. Here, Dormer, that's been the innovations, policy, a transition of socialist to free market economies. And in 1995, they joined with the groups of Southeast Asian country, but they still follow one party control policy in Vietnam. And after the war, after 1975, in 1981, the 9 Buddhist associations came together with both in Theravada and Mahayana traditions to establish one unit, Vietnamese Buddhist Sangha. And Taekwondo, the leaders of Unified Buddhist Sangha in the South before 1975, he opposed to that kind of unifications of the Buddhist Sangha in Vietnam. So later on, he was imprisoned, but he was released, but still remained under house restrictions. And currently, as well as 80% of the population follow Buddhism directly and indirectly. Some of them, they may say that they are Buddhist, but they may not practice Buddhism much. So again, up to now, because Buddhism has a long, deep roots in developments of Vietnamese history throughout 2000 years. That's why the communist government they more lenient with it than other religions, because Buddhism uh, go along with the up and down of the Vietnamese history, and it's always advocates the um, independency from other occupations or control. So in general, the concept of the practice in Buddhism that relate to what we call the harmonious practice amongst the three traditions: Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism. And like if you go to some Buddhist centers, you may see that yes, many of them practice Buddhism, but there were some Taoist and Confucius elements that people still practice. So basically, Vietnamese Buddhism does not have a strong centralized structures. The practice is similar throughout the country. So again, up to now, Vietnamese Buddhism predominantly practice Mahayana traditions, including Zen, Pure Land, and esoteric school. So the Vietnamese school was initiated by Vinny Tharuchi and Indian monks around 580s, and was prolonged to the 10th century by Vãn Han. So remember, Vãn Han was promoted as the national counselor that had the fountains of the Lý dynasty, and Vô Ngôn Thông relate to the Chinese master Ma Chu Dao Yi and Thao Dung. This set blends the meditation and chanting the Buddha names. So they were the earliest Zen school exist in Vietnam. And like we just learned recently, King Trần Nhân Tông, he developed the Trúc Lâm bamboo grove Zen school that blends Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism. And later on, Wing Thieu and Liu Quán was the Linchi offshoots introduced it in the 17th and 18th century, respectively. But modern Buddhists focus more on Pure Land, ritual, and devotions, with the exception of the Thích Thanh Tư, Trúc Lâm set, and Thích Nhật Hành Zen practice. So if you visit the Vietnamese Buddhist centers in the state, you will see many of them, especially the sincere Buddhists, they practice what we call Pure Land. That means they decide Buddha names, they decide the three important groups of Pure Lands, so that after they pass away, they would be born in the Western Pure Land of Amitabha Buddhas, and they would focus on ritual and devotions, then meditations. So again, the spiritual aspect of Buddhism were permitted into the mind of the Vietnamese Buddhists. That's why they have that kind of devotions to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And of course, some of them practice meditations, but that's a prevalent practice. But Thích Thanh Tư, he established or re-established the Chuklam, a bamboo grove, Zen set in the south, and Thích Nhất Hạnh, he's still alive. He is considered as one of the most famous Zen master in this modern age. And here, there's many Buddhist texts, or what you call sutras, that has been translated into Vietnamese from the Chinese one. And there is Mahayana Buddhist sutra like the Lotus Sutra, Amitabha Sutra, Flower Dharma Sutra, and so forth. But remember that because of the Southern movement, geopolitically, the Saiva Mahayana of Cham and Theravadas of Khmer people were practiced popularly in the central and the southern areas. So in the early 20th century, there were revival movements of Buddhism that encouraged study and practice of Mahayana and Theravada traditions. So many Theravada centers or temples was established in the south due to the influence and reduction with other Theravada countries like Cambodia, Sri Lanka, Burma, and so forth. So currently, most of the Buddhist textbook, sutra, that were in Pali language, were translated into Vietnamese language. And here, one of the temple that follow, you can see that this look like the Thai temple, but it's the typical Theravadas central temple. And in 2016, they celebrate the 35th founding anniversary of the Vietnam Buddhist Sangha that unify all the Buddhist sects in Vietnam, whether it's in the Mahayana or Theravada traditions. And so in general, the Buddhist monastic lives and festivals intertwined with the life of the Vietnamese people. So again, Vietnam was still and is still a profound Buddhist country. So the Buddhist monastic communities, the monks and nuns, they get involved with the communities, and they may run the orphanage, the medical clinics, or the homes for handicapped people or the elderly people. And of course, when we talk about the festival, there were many types of festival in Buddhist traditions, like the Vesak or the Buddha birthday, and Bulan or Plambamas, or the Parent Appreciation Day. So the Buddhists would come to celebrate, like you see here, the bathing ceremony during the Buddha birthday celebration, and Bulan, that's the times they come to the temple to pay respect to the monks and to remember about the teaching of Buddha about showing the gratitude toward the parents. And almost every days in Vietnam, they would come to the temple, especially during the first and the 15 days of the lunar months. They would come to the temple to recite the sutra and practice along with other Buddhists. And here, what we call the Umplabama festival, that is related to the Parent Appreciation Day, and this is Buddha birthday celebration. That's what displayed for the public. It's like Christmas holiday in Vietnam. And here you see that it's a long story, but to make short, the Buddha told one of his close disciples, Murayana, the way how to rescue his mother, who was born as Holy Ghost, by requesting the holy monks to pray for his diseased mother, who was Holy Ghost, because of their power of prayer. So she was rescued or got out the Holy Ghost realm and was born in the heaven. So that's the whole story. And they have the tradition of providing, giving the rules during that day. People would come and they give the red rose that represent the parents still alive, and the yellow represent the pink rose represent one parent still survive, and the white represent both parents passed away. So here the Buddhist practice throughout the countries for 2,000 years, and Vietnamese Buddhism has been closely linked with the survival of the nation, whether it's in its rise and fall. So we can see here now the Mahayana Buddhism has a great influence on Vietnamese literatures, art, music, architectures, and Buddhist cultures, traditions, and practices have been ingrained into the life of Vietnamese people. So if we discuss about, when we discuss about Vietnamese Buddhist overseas, currently in this country, in the United States, they estimate that there's about more than 2 million Vietnamese people, and there was about 300 Buddhist centers around the state. Follow the flux of Vietnamese refugees and resettlements since 1975. So here is my new center, and that was officially opened last year. We have grand opening celebrations on September 1st, 2019. With 1,000 people came, and many locals, officers came, like mayor here, as U.S. attorney in the Western Kentucky area came to participate in our grand opening celebrations. And in Texas, there's one huge center, what they call Vietnam Temple. That is one of the largest center that draw the Buddhists come to celebrate and to practice Buddhism. And here is the bar feast, that if you want to read more information that I just shared, you can read and follow this bar feed. And let me see here. I like to show you briefly about the scenes of my center in Louisville for your information. This brand new centers that's on the 3rd Street Road, 7748 3rd Street Road in the south side of Louisville. This is a time when we have grand openings and celebrations that 1,000 people came to attend our grand opening celebrations there. Okay, so anyway, so thanks for your listening, and I hope this presentation will be informative for you to learn briefly about the history of Vietnam, as well as how Buddhism spread and develop in Vietnam nowadays, as well as how we carry on our traditions in this country. All right, so again, thanks for your listening. Thank you. I see you then.